Just give you guys a little bit of an idea of why we asked you to come here. Is I'm involved with a group called the Pana Sports Foundation, and we're attempting to collect different sports stories that happened, years before, and something that we can keep and gosh, when our ancestors or people that come after us, they'll be able to take a look at these types of videos, and it's kind of have a neat story. But what we're planning on doing is what we'll do. We'll record this, okay, and we'll eventually put it out on a YouTube, so people wherever they are. Some of the people that were on these teams are in California or Arizona or whatever. So if they want to, dial that up and take a look at what we talked about today, I think they'll be able to do that. Hopefully we'll have that ready pretty quick, and we'll have a link on it's the Pana Sports Foundation's website, and it's panasportsfoundation.com, and you can take a look at it. And what I will do is after this, we'll convert this to a DVD, and if you guys leave your names and addresses with me, I'll make sure that you get a copy of this. And we've done several of these things. It's mainly just been kind of Pana sports. Terry Klein he and I do a lot of basketball together, and he said, it would be neat to do a session on that 11 to 10 game that Pana and Taylorville played. And and I thought, well, yeah, it probably would. And then I got a hold of Chuck and got a hold of some of the Pana guys, and it's tough getting everybody together. I understand that. And hopefully you guys are going to take this, and I'll kind of facilitate it for you a little bit. And if there's some questions that come up, you guys were having a good conversation when we started, or before we started, so that'll be good, something good we can talk about. But there are other questions. We'll keep this to liven this up. But let's go ahead and start out with everybody introducing themselves and who they are.
Okay, my name is Mike Durbin, and from Taylorville.
Okay.
Graduated 1971.
What position did you play?
I was a guard.
Okay.
5'9" guard then.
All right.
I'm Chuck Martin, Taylorville, graduate of high school in 1970. I was also a guard.
Don Williams, I was a coach at Taylorville for 18 years. I fortunately was there for the 11 to 10 game.
I'm Barry Heaton. I was coach at Pana at the same time.
I'm Steve Beyers. I was a junior that year. I graduated in 71, and from Pana.
My name is Pete Scherzer. I was a sophomore then. I was 6'1" forward then.
Okay. And what we're going to talk about is the 11 to 10 game that was played back in 1970. I was in 6th grade at that point, but I remember watching the game. I had my place on the floor there in the old high school, what is the Pana Junior High now, and I remember it as being a very interesting game, and I was really thrilled at watching it because it was just different. And I know a lot of people in the crowd probably were booing and talking about, hey, let's play some basketball here. But it was a great tactic that I think Barry had kind of put together, and just about pulled it off. But on, as people were, I guess I got thinking about this today that, okay, yeah, it was 11 to 10, and some people might have thought that was boring or whatever. But it kind of, Taylorville was sitting there. As I recall, you guys didn't come out and put a lot of pressure on the ball either that night. So those are, because saying you're going to stall is one thing, but then you got to pull that off, and especially if somebody's out there putting a lot of heat on you. And it just, the stars aligned that night, and it went down to Pana held the ball in the second quarter, the whole second quarter. So anyhow, let's go ahead and get started. And Barry, do you want to talk about, we'll start off with you since you're the home team, but you want to talk a little bit about that game, what your plans were coming into it? Why did you want to stall?
I want to first of all apologize to Chuck and Mike because, I'm sure their yearly stats went way down.
Oh, mine didn't vary.
But anyway, just preface this by saying that, when I applied for a job here in Pana, in my interview no less, they said, it's okay if you're playing Tower Hill in the regional and, or Ramsey or somebody like that and they beat you, but you don't want to lose to Taylorville. And I guess that, you know, I was from Jacksonville and we had played Taylorville when I was in high school, and I didn't understand the rivalry that there was between Payne and Taylorville when I came here, and as a matter of fact, well, of course, coached against Don and his predecessor, Jack Murphy, and I got along real well with both of them, and if I had to have an enemy in the conference, it would have been Effingham, not Taylorville.
Amen.
Because they didn't always treat me very nice, but anyway, I go back to Jack, when he was coaching there. I was also the cross-country coach, and we had a meet with them over here at Pana, and their cross-country coach was sick at Taylorville, and so Jack brought the team over. And they got there, because I guess that happened late in the day, and they got there right at the time the meet was supposed to start. And so I said to Jack, I said, well, you guys, we'll give you a little time to warm up before the meet. He said, well, we don't need to warm up. He said, did you ever go hunting? I said, well, a little bit, but not much. He said, well, if you're out hunting rabbits and you scare up a rabbit, he doesn't stop and do jumping jacks, does he?
He was taking the scientific approach, it sounds like to me. Well,
And then Don and I, we coached against one another, and we always got along real well and had a good time together. So that kind of leads up to the game itself. And my recollection of the game is we started out, and it was our intent to hold the ball. And like I said to Don just a minute ago, I thank him for not putting the pressure on. They were like 12-2, and I don't know what our record was, but it wasn't all that great. And they were leading the conference, and we felt the only way we could win was to keep them in a game where they didn't score a lot. So that's what our intent was. But as the game started, we went into we ran that little shuffle offense and ran a guy through all the time, and they were content to let us do that. And 2 minutes into the game, you know, we were on the east side of the gym, and the Taylorville fans started booing me right then, 2 minutes into the game. I remember Larry Fredericks, he was sitting right behind us, and he was just screaming at me for not playing basketball. And that went on from the 2 minutes into the game till into the first quarter, and then the second quarter, the Pana fans started booing. But they didn't like it. But anyway, as the game wore on, it was nip and tuck, you know. I mean, they scored, and then we tied up. And anyway, got down to the fourth quarter, and these guys may not remember, but we had we run that offense, and we sent a guy down through the middle, and they got him the ball, and I swear to God, he had the most open layup I've ever seen in my life. And he missed it, and then we went into the first overtime. I don't think anybody scored that overtime, and then in the second overtime, they had the ball, and we fouled, and their guy made the free throw, and that was it. And it ended up 11-10. So.
what, did you actually did you practice that coming up
Yes,
to that
we
game?
did.
Yeah, I heard you guys
did.
talking about that a little bit.
We practiced because I felt that was our only chance of having a shot at winning, was to hold the ball on and keep the game close, you know. So, I mean, if we ran with them, I think they'd already beaten us 15 or 20 points earlier in the year at Taylorville. So.
6, wasn't it?
It was closer than you might think, Mr. Heaton, but you're right. We had a lot of firepower, and Pana was a good team. Pana was a real good team, and we were worried about coming to your gym and playing your group, because we had lost the year before we were undefeated in the conference the year before at 13-0. Coach Williams' first year as head coach at Taylorville. And the last conference game of the year was at Pana, and your team beat us by double digits, as I remember, 69-57, I want to say. So we were afraid coming to Pana the next year, the same thing might happen. We did not expect a stall such as we experienced, but you're right, it was a tactic that almost worked.
Coach Williams, takes us back to that day, and whenever Barry's doing this and the Pain is doing this, I mean, what's going through your mind?
Well, it was like being in the twilight zone. It was just, had no clue. You just sit there and just take everything as it comes. We didn't get too excited, I don't think, and no yelling at kids or anything, which I did yell a lot, but not that evening. Just, it was a great strategy on Barry's part. I was really surprised that they were able to do it. And obviously we were fortunate to win the ball game, but we always had a great deal of respect for Barry, for Pana basketball, Pana, and yeah, we had a rivalry, the Christian County rivalry they called it, but by golly, it was a friendly rivalry. I don't think there was anything brutal about it all, not by today's standards, certainly. But it was just one of those days, and I was basically excited at the end when I saw Andy Lovekamp going up to shoot the free throw in that second overtime. He wasn't our best free throw shooter, and I looked out there and Tom James, other starter, was standing there with his arms like this, praying, and I felt that was the thing that I should be doing. So, it was, again, quite an event.
Did Andy, I can't remember this, did he have 2 free throws or
Just one.
just one? We didn't even have the bonus, did we?
No, we thought maybe he was shooting it.
The time was
Should've
off
had
the
a
clock.
two-shot.
All
Yeah.
the time it expired.
Yeah, it expired.
But I think, Chuck, didn't you say that, but the clock had not sounded
The
yet?
buzzer had not sounded, and yet the clock showed 0-0.
Zero,
Yeah.
So, yeah, and he just had the one free throw,
Yep.
and it swished. I remember he swished it. It was no doubt about it. And we were very relieved
Yeah.
to come out of your gymnasium with a win under those circumstances.
And, well, with, when you see a team doing this, and you've got that option of and I know back then, was man-to-man a big defense, or was a zone a bigger thing back then, or
Played
most?
both of them.
Okay, and so, I mean, you gotta decide when somebody does that, okay, if they're gonna sit out there and hold the ball, you go hold the ball. I mean, is that kind of a mentality that you guys had in that game?
He's the coach.
I think so.
He did what coach said to do, just like the Pana players.
You know, this is kind of unfair because you've got this great record and you coached there for a long time, and so to try and ask you to to remember that particular game, there's reasons why, yeah, it should because of the score. And back in when it happened in 1970, I don't think anybody ever said, 40 years from now or more, those guys are going to get together and going to be talking about this game and some of the strategies of it and what went on. Steve, what do you remember about the game?
Let me interject something there. I don't think that we actually just stood out there and one guy held the ball, didn't we? It seemed like we were running through our
Yeah.
offense.
The shuffle offense.
Yeah, we were running our shuffle offense, but we had told the kids not to shoot anything but a layup, and that's why they'd go through and they couldn't get the layup, so we just brought it back out again, started over.
I guess one key question there is, how did you get Randy Bruins not to shoot the ball?
That's a good question. I told Randy just the other day, I said, well, what I really told those other kids is don't pass the broom.
Randy, is there any truth to the reason, or the statement that Randy told me that he said, I always told Barry, if I made 2, I'm hot. If I missed 2 in a row, I'm due.
That was pretty much his philosophy.
Steve, anything?
There's a lot to remember about that night. I was actually a starting JV point guard for the JV. And the Monday before that game, in the hallway, Randy Bruns told me, he said, Steve, you're starting against Taylorville this Friday. I said, yeah, right. We get to practice, and Coach is handing out the white jerseys for the starting team, and he hands me one. And that's when it set in, and then we started through a scrimmage, basically half-court scrimmage, and Coach had the clock running. So we would we had this shuffle offense, which was a continuous offense, run it through. If you didn't get the layup, you just come back out and start over on the other side. And we would run that the whole time against second string or whoever Coach put in there against us. And the idea was not to make a mistake and turn the ball over. And the one thing I do remember that night, that gymnasium was so full, you could not put anybody else in there. They were, the bleachers were packed. The end of the gym had at least 2 rows of people. You couldn't see the mat on the wall. There were people all the way along there, and then when it got to the edge, the people were so full, it just curved to the bleachers.
Probably up in the band room too.
The band room, when you looked up there, there was a row of people hanging over the railing. There was another row behind them, and there was at least one more row behind them trying to see whatever they could see on that one end of that gym. And at halftime, when we went to go into the locker room, one of the, I think it was Mr. Jennings, was one of the guys working that night. He had to clear a path for us to get through those people because nobody was leaving to the concessions. Nobody left. They wanted to keep their spot. To get to the locker room, we had to almost have an escort to get in there. That's how full that gym. I've never seen it like that before. And one of these, or Coach said something about the booing. That's the first game I ever heard our own fans boo our team, ever. But they did. And you said something, Chuck, about having firepower. If I remember right, you guys were also up-tempo.
Yeah, we love to run.
You love to run,
It was ours.
and the
It was
fans
ours.
love to watch that.
Yes, sir.
And we were doing just the opposite for what people actually come to see.
We
So
played
all
one-
week long, we run that stall practice, that stall offense, all week long for that weekend.
Chuck, I want to come back to you. You in 2011, I believe, you wrote an article for the Breeze Courier, or helped them with an article that was in the paper, and they were recanting that game.
Yes.
At that point, I think one of the quotes in that article you're talking about is Pana running this weave offense, okay, and cutting somebody through. And Bruns would come through there, and every time he would come through there, the Love Camp would always just bump him. Not enough to make a foul, but enough to let him know, hey, I'm here, you know. You want to talk a little bit about that, or?
Andy Lovecamp's my best friend, and he made the winning free throw, and I had hoped he would be able to come today, but at the last minute, he had a conflict and he was unable to come. But he was a great football player. Terry Klein would certainly know that. And he liked to hit people. Andy liked to hit people, and a couple of us did actually, and Randy would cut through the middle, and Randy Bruns would cut. Andy told me, he said, I'm tired of Bruns cutting through in front of me. And I said, don't hit him. And he said, well, just a little bit. He was just like, he couldn't wait to just have a little contact. And you're right, just to remind the Pana players that we were still on the court with them, I think was part of it. But Andy was a great competitor and a tremendous athlete at Taylorville. So I'm so happy he made the free throw, and I'm happy he's my close friend.
And surprised.
That's right.
Wonder
I
what-
had confidence in him. He nothing but net.
And as Don, as we go on after that night and reading that article, Shelbyville, or not Shelbyville, but Greenville then had beaten. You got word that Greenville beat Effingham, and you guys had won the conference, or got at least were.
For a tie.
You were in the
Had to win against
driver's
Shelbyville.
seat, so to speak, for that. And if that game would have turned out a little bit different, you know, and it had been one point on Pana's side, that wouldn't have been, you know, that it's funny how those memories. Mike, what do you remember about the game?
Well, several things, and one probably not real proud of is that the guy that they cut through and made layups all practice, we were just discussing, was a guy I lost for first time, and I prided myself, and I think when we played, I got to pick I got the guys that were pretty good offensively, and Chuck was our offensive guy, so kind of freed him up to be able to do his thing, you know, cut through and shoot and score. So I kind of took it as a challenge whenever a coach would say, this is our top scorer, don't let him have the ball, you know, and stuff. So it was a fun challenge because it was a challenge. But that night, and I enjoyed that game because of the fact that you couldn't make a mistake because every possession was important. And you knew that because it wasn't going to be a lot of possessions the way the game was playing out. And I think we were good enough defense, maybe with the cutting through, and we'd protected from the layups that my man missed that night. What was his name again? I'm sorry.
Chuck.
Chuck.
Schlotes?
Yeah. Chuck had cut through like they'd planned it, and it worked, because I must have went to sleep for a second, probably watching all the people in the stand. But anyway, I think I remember when you discussing Randy, my recollection was that Randy had to take because you played for the shot, either layup, but it came down to, it seemed like most of the quarters came down to taking a shot at the last second. And I think I remember Randy making a couple and missing a couple, or similar to that fact. So your plan was working and our plan was working, hence the score was so close. But I also, the other thing that I remember is, as we talked about earlier, 11-10, and we had 5 starters that scored points in it. All 5 starters scored points in an 11-point ball game, which I thought was kind of amazing in itself. But I also remember, and I didn't look over the bench because for some reason they left me open about top of the key in an 11-10 ball game, and I launched one. Thank heavens it went in, and I didn't have to answer for that one. But those are 2 things to remember, and they were talking about the people in the stands. And at one point, you know, you have seconds downtime because something's going on and you're watching your guy. But I remember looking up there and I said, these people just have to be bored to death. I said, it's fun to play in, but to see people just run around, no baskets, and that's what you go for as a fan. You want to see your team win, but you also want to see scoring and stuff. So, but again, it was a great game, and the fact that it was the way it worked out, and everything was important. And always should be, because you lose by 1 or 2, and you can look back in the game, how many turnovers you had. I don't think there's many turnovers in that game. And stuff, it come down to who made the shot and when. So we were fortunate enough to make one more shot than they did. So that was a few things that I remember
So did
too.
Love Camp have 3 points that night then?
One.
Oh, that was his.
It was his
One free
only,
throw was his
Discussing
only
this, yeah, that maybe his only possession, what rebound.
he had 1 point, a winning point.
One of the things that I thought in looking at the story, looking that over, I think Pana was 3 for 7 or 8 from the free throw line, and Taylorville was maybe 4 for 15. I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but it just, when I looked at that, it kind of jumped out at me as saying, oh boy, you know, Taylorville.
I don't remember missing that many free throws. Was that the Pana scorebook you might have been referring to? I'm just asking the question. I'm just not sure I asked the question. Maybe it's a misprint of Reese.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't remember that many fouls, because it was a clean game and kept moving. I don't think there could have been that many fouls.
I read that in one of these 2 articles that I was reading,
Yeah.
but I was thinking, what? It just seemed like there was a lot of free throws missed, and I'm thinking, I didn't know Taylorville probably took that many shots.
We
I don't
usually
know.
were pretty good at free throws, but I don't remember missing that many, and it's possible, but it's been a long time, 48 years ago.
Now, this was a double overtime game, right?
Yes.
Right.
A double overtime game,
It's
so
true.
11-10 double overtime.
Yeah, it was 5-4 at the quarter, it was 5-4 at half, it was 10-10 at the end of the 3rd quarter. Neither team scored in the 4th quarter, neither team scored in the 1st overtime, neither team scored in the 2nd overtime until no time left on the clock, and Andy made the free throw at the end.
Now, second quarter, did Taylorville get to touch the ball?
See, I thought we didn't even touch it, but I think Mike might have gotten a chance to throw one up at the buzzer after a Pana miss from near half court, if you remember.
It was closer, it seemed like it was in a play
You
context.
think so? I don't really know. I think we might have had 1 possession,
Yeah.
Terry, but it wasn't a good possession. We didn't have much time to do anything with the ball. So, yeah, it's scoring onslaught early, and then first and third quarter, all the points, first and third quarter, except for the winning point in the second overtime.
Pete, I'm going to pan back around to you. You were a sophomore at the time.
Yes.
What did you think about all this? Did you get any game action on that game?
But during practice, we ran the defense, and everybody thought, well, it was talk that it wouldn't happen because everybody talked about Randy, because we didn't think Randy would hold the ball that much. Seriously. You know, and sitting there on the bench, everybody was, like Coach was saying, that there was a lot of people yelling, and I remember one person that really didn't yell that much, but was yelling. He's been probably playing basketball for years, was Gene Funk. Gene, I looked over there and he was yelling, let's play ball, let's play ball. I don't know if you guys remember Gene Funk?
I do.
Okay. And I remember that, and I remember, like Steve said, we had to be separated to get into the locker room. I remember that because the crowd was so big. But I thought Chuck was going to make that layup, and I think a lot of people did. But everybody was surprised he didn't make it. I mean, it was just surprising, and I think he was really upset. I know he was after the game. And, it was just it was a good game, but it was just tough to lose by Chuck missing the layup. I know Terry was playing too. And Chuck was a pretty quick ball player, and he ran the offense pretty well. But you know, that's just part of the game. And I remember Andy making that free throw, and it wasn't nothing but net. I remember that. But it was fun to watch. I mean, it really was, but a lot of people didn't think it was. But it was a good strategy by Coach. You know, so.
I wonder how many people said, what is going on that night? Probably a lot of them. But
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of yelling.
Well, I asked my assistant coach, I said, are you on board with us here? He wouldn't answer me, so I think I was going.
And that was Dave Plitzing.
Yeah.
Dave.
Yep,
Dave, Mr.
David's no longer with us. Yep.
You
But
guys said earlier before we started here today that for the last 25 seconds of the game, what did you say about that? Because I thought that layup came closer to the end of the game than.
Well, that's what they were saying. I don't remember what the time frame was on the layup, but they were saying it was towards the end of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, when we practiced that week, if it got under 10 seconds and the guard was taking it across the top, across the front, and that defender went ahead of him, then he was going right down the center of the lane.
Mhm.
So we got the shot that we were after
Right.
at the end of the game. And he made it all through practice,
Yeah.
all week long.
It
but-
don't count then, though.
Doesn't count
Darn
then.
it. I wish they did.
in a game like that, points just came at such a premium that it wasn't funny.
Yeah, like you said, that was the neat thing about it, is because the fact that every possession was, just magnified, I think.
Yeah.
Because you could, like I said, you could almost, with those points, you could almost count the possessions, making them or missing them.
Well, I think Coach told us that once we got possession, we were to hold it the
Mhm.
whole quarter
Right.
with that offense.
That's what I remember too, is you guys did that. That's
But-
why I brought up the Randy.
But I kind of remember you guys getting the first tip right down and score.
Well, I wish that was true. And
Did
the
you
reason I
not score
know,
on the tip off?
well, we used to do that a lot. Andy would tip it back to me, and I'd take off and either get a basket or a charging foul. And I didn't care which one, actually, because it was to set the tone of the game we're gonna attack. And on in that game, that happened. I made the layup, but you had a referee that saw it a little differently in terms of the contact. Called me for a charging foul, waved off the basket, and it was like, oh shoot, that didn't work out too well. So we thought we'd be up 2-0, and instead I had a foul and it was painted ball. So, but you're right, that's a great memory. The first play of the game was I went to the bucket, got a charging foul.
I detect a little bit of orneriness in you, you know?
It wasn't
And
that, well,
you and I-
both communities are a bit from a coal miner's mentality.
Uh-huh.
My dad was a coal miner, and if you weren't gonna be aggressive, he just felt like, why play the game? And we sort of mirrored our coach, and he lit a fire under us, and we did things that year that nobody thought we could do, mainly because we had great inspiration and leadership from Coach Don Williams.
you had said something about in that game that you're trying to goat Randy maybe into taking some shots or whatever, and you came up to him and said something about, hey, something about your point average is going to take a nosedive or whatever tonight.
A little good-natured ribbing. He was a great shooter, and he was hitting, I think he was averaging over 20 points a game, and I knew his scoring average was gonna suffer. And he just said something that it was coach's orders, as I remember what he said. Now, he may remember it differently, but I remember him saying something to that effect.
Well, he still blames me to this day. Keeping the scoring average.
Okay, so that, okay, that's pretty close.
Well, they were discussing that earlier about the conference leaders in scoring, and
Yeah.
he probably realized that he was
Yeah.
right there in the top three.
And I don't know if we said this on camera, but it's probably worth saying again, or if it was whenever we were talking ahead of time that Randy had said something about, did we say that on camera? His comment to you that if I make 2 in a row, I'm hot. If I miss 2 in a row, I'm due.
You said that.
Okay.
Great save.
So, well, Don, that year, you just followed up a year that was your conference champs, undefeated in the conference, weren't you the year before? Or no, Pana beat you in the conference.
We also won before.
13-1.
Yeah.
And so that year, you had a 6'8" center, 6'4" person, another 6'4".
Bob Bond, that was the year before, yeah.
Right, and then so this next year, and the one we're talking about with this game, your tall guy was Lovecamp at 6'4",
6'4".
and nobody expected you really to do or duplicate what you did the year before, and you did. Can you talk a little bit about that? Or-
I think we had 2 returning starters, and Chuck and Andy, that helped, and Mike came in and fit in real well, and Gary Farr
Gary was
came in, another football player.
another football player.
Who was not a great scorer or anything like this, but he's a good rebounder, good defensive player, and hustled, and I think, basically, I'd like to say that I was responsible, but I wasn't. It was the athletes themselves. They're the ones that did. They worked hard. I think we would shoot, 100 free throws every morning before school.
Shoot until you got blisters.
And,
That's how it went. That's how it went.
and we recorded them. Recorded, had a little circle on the 100 numbers, and worked hard. They worked hard, and they just did it on their own, basically. Not all together, but basically, I think.
I think that we had a team concept also, because during the course of the season, every one of the 5 starters, and we only had 5 that dressed for the varsity, everybody else played in the junior varsity game. And every one of the 5 starters led the team in scoring at least once.
Wow.
And I think that's a tribute to Coach Williams and his emphasis on team.
Well, it makes it tough whenever you have that. You don't have that one person that you know you got to shut down. That somebody else is going to pick up the slack with that.
And I would add for Mike that we played Decatur Eisenhower, and before the game, their athletic director told Jack Murphy, our athletic director, that they weren't going to reschedule us anymore because they had a chance to pick up a more outstanding opponent. Obviously, I was able to go in the locker room before the game and quote that to the team, and Mike ended up, I don't say he swished the free throw.
The second one, first one, no.
No, first one banked in, and we beat them by 2.
59-57
Yeah,
at their place.
yeah.
And they were a tremendous team.
Yes,
They were
they
one of
were.
the best teams in central Illinois. They had a tremendous group of players. And Coach Williams told us before the game, he said he didn't give a darn if we won another game all year. Just beat this team, and he would be happy. And we did.
Yeah, and I kind of overstated myself, I think.
Did you ever
Yeah,
replace
I
that
think I-
trash can, by the way?
Yeah.
That's the first thing I saw come through the door when he came in. It looked like a field goal. It was right through the uprights.
I don't remember that.
I believe I would have reminded him, John, that he had tough enough opponents right now.
To worry about, yeah. Barry, on with that game, obviously, okay, you were on the losing end of it. The next night, I think you had to go to Van Day and play, and I think you lost by 4 points there. And is from what I can gather from these articles. What kind of a difference do you think that made in that game? What'd that take out of you as far as losing an 11-10 game as opposed to winning it 12-11?
Well, I don't think we tried to hold the ball against Vandalia, so.
You didn't.
I don't know whether it had I mean, I know, like Steve said, we practiced all week getting ready for Taylorville, so it may have been a factor as to how we played at Vandalia, but, we probably went back to playing our normal game after that.
Yeah, I just didn't know if it was mentally draining, because a game like that, physically, it wouldn't have been as draining, but I think mentally it would have been just to try and, so. Steve, anything more you can remember about that game, or?
That might have been mentally training on Randy. Maybe that's, I don't know how many points he had that day.
I told Randy if he wasn't coming, we were gonna trash him.
I saved him a seat just in case he come in here, but he didn't make it.
Yeah. Okay, a couple questions I want to ask you guys is, okay, that was back in 1970. Today it's, 2018. And so that's what, 48 years ago? Okay. But what do you think is the biggest change in high school basketball since then?
From my standpoint, it's way more physical than it used to be
Yes.
when they don't call fouls that they used to call.
Okay.
Well, that was a good point that he just brought up, because our photographer kept all the games at home games, and the old 16 millimeter, And at one point, one of our player, Gary Farr, Don alluded to here, him and Andy took up some real estate because they were football players and they were built well, and stuff. But the point I was going to make here, and I think I'm going to lose it here on you, and stuff. Yeah, I did. I just lost.
Well, we'll come back to you on it. Anyway,
Well, on that note, Mike, that was at a time where you couldn't touch somebody without
Exactly.
getting a foul.
We were discussing the turnover. You couldn't do
Right.
this, couldn't do that. But that was the point. The 16 millimeter tapes, he converted to VHS, so he gave us a copy. I mean, you had these big reels that maybe had 10 minutes of game time,
Yeah.
it seemed like. But when I looked at them, I thought, man, we were just quick, we were fast, and just awesome. You look at it, and it looked like we were in slow motion compared to, I think, today. I watch ball games where the kids are just 110 mile an hour, 110%, and they're throwing their body everywhere. I think we did to a little bit, but it seems a lot quicker and a lot faster, even if you take out the roughness. I like to see speed. I think that was so cool to watch teams that really play fast, play hard, aggressive, but in the context of our game, which without fouling them or going over the back and knocking them down and getting the ball and then take off the other way, nothing's called. But that's my personal opinion on that one.
Well, you wonder how, our goal was to, if we could get the tip, we were gonna control the ball the
Right.
whole quarter. And I think one of the quarters we did.
You did. I was thinking,
And
my
for a last
recollection,
second shot.
you were close. I mean,
But you think back and you think, how could a team control the ball the whole quarter without somebody fouling? Nowadays, I think a team would just pick the worst free throw shooter and foul him.
and fouling.
Well, back then, you didn't do that unless it was near the end of the game.
You had to.
So it was pretty well hands-off.
Yeah.
If you had your hand on somebody checking them or it was a foul.
Yeah, that's the way it was. Yeah.
So it had to be more finesse than it was physical.
And we were talking about Barry and his strategy for that game. You prepare for any game, you're doing strategy. You look at the weakness and strengths of a team and you try to combat that. But I don't know what our coach's theory was and why we didn't go after you a little more or something. But no, it's just our style was defense. I think we felt that we played our good defense. If you either made a mistake, missed a shot, turnover or something, that we could run our offense and possibly score. Not saying we would, possibly score. So why foul a guy if you still got a chance? Again, you said if you're not behind or no reason to foul yet. So it became that you ran your offense, we played our defense, and it kind of turned into that kind of a game, I believe.
Well, it got to be every time we got possession, we started to stall.
Yeah.
Now, did you guys, somewhere in the game, did you guys hold the ball?
Yeah.
For
We did.
some
I think we
period of
held it
time?
Almost a quarter, didn't we?
I don't
I was
remember that.
thinking you did.
Yeah, we held it for a long time.
I don't know.
No.
I can't remember. I'm sorry. I don't know.
That I don't either, yeah, because we would run, I figured, run our offense trying to score less. It was, we were ahead maybe, and we were trying to,
But you may not,
Coach may
you
have
may
said
not
that.
have had a continuous offense
Right.
that would let that.
we didn't have
develop.
something set up for that. You know, we had our
Like ours,
offensive
yeah.
plays like,
Right.
and they were varied, you know. Now I think more, probably like a lot of teams, college pros, they run certain patterns, but they're on the move.
Right.
It's just one continuous play, what it looks like to me.
Well, shot clock too.
Yeah, and shot clock, yeah, exactly. We didn't have, three-point play would have been another good
Yeah,
one
we
I wish
didn't
we
have
had.
3-point then.
No,
And
no
a
3
wider
points.
lane.
Yeah.
And a wide, yeah.
Yeah, see, we had that 6-foot lane back then.
Well, it
That
was,
Important
yeah.
to a guard though.
Well, it opened things up.
Yeah, it would.
More
What,
openings.
what were the free throw parameters? You know, today you've got, if you get 10 fouls in a half or whatever, or in a quarter, it doesn't matter, but you get a double bonus. Back then,
No.
No,
you
there
got
were,
a shoot, you had a shooting foul.
Well, every foul resulted in a free throw of some sort. So even common fouls, you got one free throw.
Only one?
One free throw. And actually, that was kind of stupid if you look back at it, but you didn't have a three-point shot. So every foul, somebody went to the line, unless it was a player control foul. And the bonus took effect at 7 fouls and a half, and you had 1 and 1, but there were no double bonuses.
Well, one thing is, I
Every
mean,
quarter started with a jump ball too, instead of
Yeah.
Even the
alternate
very
sessions.
first foul of the game, we shot, right?
Probably did.
Yeah.
But it was, I got charged, I got called for charging,
No, I
so
mean,
the
I
ball was
don't
out
mean
of
that
bounds.
specific game, I mean, any foul
Every
was
foul.
a free throw, right?
Yes, every
Yeah, I've
foul.
forgotten that.
It was either 1 shot or 2 shots, depending on if you're in the act of shooting. So, yeah, the game changed a lot. And then, of course, carrying the ball, we couldn't do that then. You know, they actually, the referee, I'm a former referee, they called double dribble, they called traveling, they called I did the basketball games for Taylorville, you know, this year on the radio. I did 30 games and there was 1 3-second call in 30 games. Now, you gotta be kidding me. Somebody's in that lane more than one time in 30 games. So I don't understand why the referees won't enforce the current rules. It would make for a cleaner game, and I think a better game. But for some reason, they're reluctant to blow their whistle.
saw LeBron James highlight of him the other day, and I think he took one dribble between half court and the basket. And they said, oh, look at this great play, and I'm thinking, wow, great play. Yeah, you couldn't do that in high school.
The other thing that's changed, if you don't mind my mentioning it, that from a referee's point of view, is then the athletic director or the head coach or whomever, the home team hired the referees. And I'm not suggesting anything, please don't misunderstand. It's just that today in most conferences now, those referees are assigned to the games. So there was always this concern of this rivalry you spoke about. I almost was a Pana Panther. When I was born, my parents lived here in Pana, but I was born in DuQuoin and moved to Taylorville because of coal mine closings when I was 11. So I didn't have this hatred of Pana, not at all. In fact, I respected Pana. I thought it was a good town, still do. But we always wondered what kind of a fairness quotient would be applied when you traveled. And we hated to go to Effingham. You mentioned Effingham earlier. We hated to go there because for some reason, the referees there just didn't like purple or gold or something. Not quite sure.
Orange and blue.
Orange and blue.
And one of the things that we were worried about, you mentioned about why we didn't come out and put some more pressure on the ball in the 11-10 game. One of the reasons is we knew that Pana was a great free throw shooting team. We knew that if we fouled any of the players on the court for Pana, they were likely make their free throws and put us deeper in a hole. So that's one of the things that Coach Williams cautioned us about, don't foul.
I wonder what you talked about good free throw shooting teams. You see a lot of teams anymore, especially college teams, that just can't make a free throw.
Yeah.
And it just seems like, and I know, well, even in high school, and I'm thinking, does anybody spend that much time with that anymore? But maybe they do, maybe they don't, I don't know. But what,
I agree with Chuck 100% on that. Like back when we were playing you guys, we hired our own officials, and I always thought that was bad because you might get home job somewhere, and
Yep.
you might get good officials you never knew, you know, when going into those games, but I always thought it'd be better if the conference would assign officials to the.
That's probably what they figured out.
Yeah, I think so.
Another question I want to ask is, and just get some personal opinions here. Who do you think was the best, okay, the best high school basketball player that you ever, that you know of? Or can you choose?
Back in the day when we played, or?
Anytime,
See, 'cause that- yeah.
even today's day.
That would be very tough for me to pick current stuff, because when I played and I really enjoyed all the sport, I played a few sports and enjoyed them and I did it, but as I got away from it, I got other interests and stuff, and I'm not a big, I hate to say this, but I'm not a big sports watcher.
Uh-huh.
I'm not big, my boys are, they love Illinois sports, but we were discussing it earlier, I was telling even playing against the bigger teams back then, you know, your Springfields and Quincy, and we played in the Limestone Tournament, Pekin and Ottawa and all those guys up north, real good teams. But playing against them, kind of a blur, you know, those guys, because we didn't only see them once or twice a year. In a mid-year classic, we'd have some teams down. And I was telling the guys earlier that my big recollection was of Otho Tucker when he played for Paris. Because I think Otho had pretty good height to him. Maybe your height, Steve?
6'6".
6'6" or something, and just a well-rounded athlete. Of course, he went to Illinois and played, and I think they really groomed him. He was a very good defensive ball player, but I think we were small compared to them, so I think we're more in a zone most of the time, but you had to play a loose zone because he could come down, and I told the story because I can remember looking a lot at the ends of his shoes as he went up to shoot, and I had my hands up. I don't think it did a whole lot of good, but he was very athletic, and like I said, I remember that fact, being able to jump that high. I thought that was totally amazing that he had that kind of talent. And he's a big guy. I mean, he wasn't I don't know if he was a guard for Paris or.
He's a guard forward.
Forward more. I mean, he'd be a good forward row.
Good player.
So he'd probably play anywhere, but he's the one I remember playing against probably that stood out in my mind. But in that time frame, as far as good players, you know, go, he's just well-rounded, quick, and stuff. So I don't think we played man-to-man with him. Probably couldn't have. I don't think we had anybody for that. So I'd have to pick him for me, my career.
Chuck, how about you?
Al, this choice is easy for me. Mark Stevenson of Taylorville is the best basketball player I ever played with as a teammate. He had so much talent, it was unbelievable. And Mark played his best in the biggest games. And he's a year older than me, and it's a privilege just to be on the same court with Mark Stevenson. So talented. He went to the University of New Mexico out of high school, full scholarship there, and was just a tremendous talent. From an opponent's point of view, Bill Madlock, Decatur Eisenhower, who was a tremendous baseball player, of course, in the major leagues, was everything a high school basketball player would have wanted to be. Powerful, strong, quick, smart, smooth, all of those things. And Decatur Eisenhower had another player named David Landrum, who I think led the Decatur Herald and Review in scoring as a senior. Those two players were tremendous athletes as well. But if I had to start a basketball team with one player in high school, there's no doubt I'd pick Mark Stevenson.
Yeah, I think you referred to him as a legend in one of those articles that I was
When you
reading.
play with somebody who is that talented, it makes you better. And Mark made all of us better players on the court.
You guys being first, you get off the hook. Now everybody here behind you is saying, "Okay, who am I going to pick?" Don, it's a kind of for you and Barry. It's kind of an unfair question, but I don't know. Do you have anybody that stands out in your mind that's you think the best high school basketball player you saw?
Well, I had the good fortune of playing with a young man about 5'8" by the name of Billy Ridley, who was just fantastic. Could do all the things you would expect a player to do, plus he could handle the ball, he could shoot. He could pass to teammates. Back in the day and age when the rules, you couldn't take that hand beneath the ball, you had to have your hand on top of the ball, or he could throw that ball behind his back, just like most people could, throwing forward. But he just was just an excellent player and was a great, great team leader. But I'll also go along with Chuck. I had the good fortune of coaching Mark Stevenson, and Mark was an excellent player as well.
Okay, Ridley was he a Taylorville player, or why do I know that name? Is
Yeah.
that-
He
Okay,
played at, yeah, 52. I think we were 28-2.
wow.
And I think we defeated Peoria Manual by 18 points in the state tournament, back when 16 teams went in one class. And we had beaten Quincy at our place earlier in the year, and then they beat us by 5 points in the Elite Eight, as you would call it today, at Champaign.
Wow.
But he was an excellent player.
Well, Barry, before I get you to answer that question, I want to ask both of you guys the question as far as, today, and this maybe goes along with some of the changes in, from back then and now. Today, it just seems like there's such emphasis on if you're going to play basketball, then you're going to go to these camps, you're going to go to this type of stuff. What did you guys do in the summer? And was there anything like that back then?
Well, we took teams to camps. I was taking down to Southern.
No, we didn't.
But these guys didn't go, and it was after a few years, and they weren't really popular as much back
You guys go
in the late 60s and early 70s. Once you get past us into the 80s, they became
Yeah.
very, very prominent.
I think back then too, there was even our age group, which we're getting a little older now, but there was just the basics. You did the basics. I mean, you went outside, you were playing basketball, baseball, some kind of baseball, stickball, whatever it is, football. But those three right there, I think were the basics. And you're always playing park, summer, baseball or basketball. And pick up it, and then I don't know if we got any summer programs.
We used to have open gym.
Yeah.
We just open the gym up, let them play. It was illegal according to the IHSA rules to coach them during the summertime, but now you can do anything.
Yeah, it seems like it's those guys that are multi-sport athletes. It kind of really puts some pressure on them to be the best they can be at each one of those sports. Barry, what about you? Best high school player?
In 100 years, you couldn't get me to answer that question. I mean, it's been 48 years since we played this game, but I always felt like there were, I don't know, it seemed like to me when I was coaching, all these like Taylorville and Effingham and Hillsborough, they always had a player that was really good. And probably Chuck, that's probably why we decided to hold the ball, because I knew he was on that team.
Thank you.
And anytime we played somebody, I always thought they had a superstar, and we were trying to stop that superstar. But I can't single one out that I would say was the best I ever saw, except I did attend the state tournament. I started going in 1954 and went for 52 straight years, and then finally quit going. But the best one I ever saw up there was that Cassie Russell when he played in the state tournament. He was a good one.
No.
And then that Dave Robish from Springfield was good, but I never coached against them or played against them or anything. But and I remember Bill Ridley when he played at Taylorville. I was just a real little kid then, but he was a good one. But I wouldn't want to single one out because there were too many good ones.
It's a tough question, but hey, you're getting paid a lot to do this today. Steve, what about you?
I can think of a lot of good players. I didn't follow a lot of players till I got into high school and got exposed to a lot of that. Pana players that I would think of that I remember watching when I was younger was Bill Weber, heck of a shooter. Jerry Otlow was quite a bit older than me, shoot long shots and real
Not
accurate with them.
3-point shots, though.
They weren't threes. We didn't have 3-point
Didn't
shots.
have them.
The Paris team was pretty impressive because it wasn't just Otho Tucker. There was 4 of those guys at 6'4"
They're just
or
big,
above.
just same kind of.
And then a guard called Gosnell, I think
Gosnell.
was his name, that could really handle the ball. Probably the best one I played with was Randy Bruns.
Mhm.
He was just a pure shooter, and he could play defense. He was a little short to rebound. I always accused him of saving energy for shooting instead of getting rebound. But other than that, Randy was just, I played independent ball. After college, played independent ball with Randy.
Yeah, right.
And you always were glad he was on your team, because you always, he rarely had an off day. But to just pick one particular player, I don't know if I could pick one out.
You know, Al, I will say this, of all the Pana players I saw play, I didn't coach all of them that I saw play, but, and I wasn't here when Mike Bland played, but the best Pana player that I think I ever saw, I didn't coach him, but was Donnie Funneman. He was a real player.
He was on the state team.
No, it was Tommy.
Oh, it was Tommy.
Tommy, the older one.
Tommy was in '88, I think.
They had that, Springfield Calvary had that, I don't know, he's 6'8" or 6'9", and
Luke Jackson.
yeah, that
Luke
Jackson.
Jackson.
And I saw Donnie just ram one right down his throat. He was a great player.
Pete, how about you?
That's a rough question too, but I was sitting here thinking about everybody talking, and I think probably the state championship Pana basketball that we won the state. Of course, Barry's boy was one of the players on that team too. But I think everyone on that team played as one big team, and I think they were all, you know, tough players. Wouldn't you agree, Barry? That was a good team.
These guys were mentioning a while ago about how at some point in their year, somebody was the leading scorer. The thing about that state championship team that I think set them apart was they all knew their role and played their role. You know, Tommy and Mark were their scorers, but that Micey kid could rebound and play defense better. Anyway, he wouldn't shoot a shot as far as me to Don. But he was a player, and that Moss kid was good, and then the coach's stepson was a good player too. So they had kids that knew their role.
Well,
Played good defense.
Pana got their state championship in 1988, is
Yeah.
that right? And Taylorville got theirs in 44, is that 44? Do you have anything that you guys want to, I know that's really, you got anything you want to say about that state championship team? Anything that you've heard about them? Obviously, you guys weren't watching them at that
Just an
point.
amazing record at 45-0. It'll never be repeated in a single season. Can't imagine
They won't let us play that.
play that many games, but to play that many games in a season is just amazing. And Don, I didn't know that, but it's just, you're in awe of the fact that on any given night, anybody can lose. And to go through 45-0 shows you the determination, if nothing else, of a group of individuals, whoever they might be, to day in, day out, to do that kind of job and stuff. Because it's, I mean, nobody's out there laying down. You're all out there to do the same thing. That was win a game and do the best you can. And I'm sure they're just like Pana was and Taylorville was back there. I think in our years, to divert a little bit, everybody played as a unit, and I don't ever recall anybody, you played your role, and if you got the opportunity, you were shooting. The play was set up and it was yours, you took it. You know, that was the game. The best shot, whoever got the best shot took it, you know. Circumstances would dictate when you took it, but I don't think there was ever, ever remember personally that, and you guys maybe come back to me, that you were out there as a team, you weren't out there as an individual to do, hey, I'm the shooter tonight, or I'm the rebounder. It was, everybody was doing, you had the whole night to do everything, and you tried, if you could do it, do it. So there was no, and I think that's probably what they did too, is somebody had to pick you up, because to win 45 games, somebody had to pick you up and have a good night doing something, rebounding or defensive or offensive. So I thought that's quite amazing. A lot of teams have won a lot of games in a row over seasons, but which is still amazing too, to come back and another team and start over again.
So the other thing that's amazing is that back then they allowed you to play that many games. I mean, it just is, when you said 45, and I remember seeing that now, but that is pretty amazing.
45
That's,
goals.
had to be, and was it Johnny Orr, was he the coach?
No,
Or he's a player?
Yeah.
Johnny was a player.
Yeah.
What I remember about that, hearing about that team is, again, I kind of grew up in DuQuoin, and my uncle, my dad's brother, was on a DuQuoin team that played against Taylorville in the Centralia Holiday Tournament that year. And DuQuoin, I guess, was really good, and Taylorville beat them, of course. And then I remember when we moved to Taylorville in '63, my uncle told me, he said, whatever you do, make sure you go out for that basketball team because they're good. And I remember that for that many years, whatever that is, that many years later. So they were an impressive team, and they made their mark throughout the state. And I think, Don, you would probably know better, but I think the schedule was a little soft. There were scheduled games, and then there were challenge games, where a team from wherever said, well, we heard you're good, we can beat you. No, you can't. Yes, we can. Well, we'll see. We'll play you Thursday. And that was how some of the games were arranged.
Wow, that's the first I've ever heard of that.
I think so.
That's-
That's
I understand that's what happened. That's what they say. I had the good fortune of playing for Coach Stanley at Beloit College for 3 years, and then was able to be his assistant at Rockford Auburn for 7 years, and then I started out my career in teaching over in Dubuque, Iowa, as an assistant to Johnny Orr. So what I'm alluding to is that I got to hear a lot of stories about these. How many were embellished, I don't know, but I did hear a great many, and evidently it just was a fantastic team. So then there's not much more you can say. 45-0 says it all.
We've been going about an hour here, and I've got a couple more questions that I'd like to ask you. One, and remember this is 2018, who's your pick to win the NCAA tournament this year? We're down to the final four almost.
Illinois out of it yet?
Well, no, but Loyola's in it.
Loyola. I'll go with Loyola.
About you, Chuck?
Yeah, the sentimental favorite in my mind is Loyola. We couldn't go to 6 o'clock mass yesterday in Taylorville because my wife had to make sure we watched Loyola play in their Elite Eight matchup yesterday. So we went to Morrisonville this morning, but I'm hoping Loyola wins. It would be a great story for our college basketball if that happens.
Sure would. Don, how about
I feel
you?
the same way. Loyola supporter.
Barry?
At least they're from Illinois.
What's that? Yes, and they're
It's
from
an Illinois team.
Barry?
Well, my nephew runs a pool. And, you have to fill out your bracket all the way through, and I picked Virginia to win it all.
You and a lot of other people probably.
So that shows you where I stand, but I didn't know if I'd ever say this about the Taylorville guys, but I'm with them. If Loyola can win it, I
About you, Steve?
I had Villanova. I was thinking them all the way, and they may still do it. That game was going when we sat down here.
Was it?
they were ahead by 6 when I came.
I don't know if they're still in it or not, but Loyola has been a lot of fun to watch.
Yep.
And after they won that first game and got in there to play, that bracket got busted, so I pulled for them the whole way. And they won again last night, so amazing how that team plays.
Pete?
My heart's with Loyola, but I think Villanova probably will. Brenson's pretty tough.
Yep.
When he didn't go to Illinois, I was really upset, but he really fit in good with that. He's tough. Loyola would be great to win, especially with Sister
Sister Jean?
Jean.
You know, Terry and I do a lot of basketball games for Pana, and I'm always trying to do some research to talk about little different things about the floor, or things that we didn't really know, or things that you just take for granted, like people calling the basketball people cagers. Okay, and why, you guys, any of you know why they call people cagers, or why they call basketball players cagers?
I have a guess.
Okay,
I think the first court was a cage.
You're-
And the game was played inside a cage.
you're right.
But I'm not sure of any other details.
Now, Chuck, did you know that right up, or did you have to research that?
I didn't do any research. I just have this
See,
ability to retain
We're way behind you because we had to research that.
Yes, we did.
unimportant facts. I have
That's
a
right.
lot of those.
And the other one that and I played some basketball, but wasn't that good at it, but played for a long time, and I never heard anybody talk about the nail before.
The nail?
The nail. Does anybody know where the nail is? Steve, you've got to know where the nail is. With your basketball family? Anybody?
The nail,
Yeah, the nail.
You got him on that.
never heard of it.
No? The nail, evidently, well, not evidently, it is the middle part of the free throw line. They always put a nail there. It's where they gained all their bearings off of for the measurements. So-
A small hole, you mean the nail hole or
Yeah,
actual?
nail. There was a nail that was put there for,
No,
so.
makes sense.
So anyhow, hey, if nothing more, you guys take that home with you and really wow your. Anyhow, I want to thank you guys for coming and doing this today on a Sunday. You could be doing a lot of other things, but you've really given us some good information here, some good stories. If there's some other stuff about that particular game that's mainly what we came here to talk about. Any closing comments on it, please feel free to jump in and let's hear it. But
Hey, Al, the only thing I'd like to say, and this is not a testimonial towards coaches or whatever, but it was always fun playing against Taylorville. The rivalry was a rivalry, but it was always good spirited and.
In the game,
Always great, whether it was football, basketball, baseball, whatever. And it was a great one. You hated to see it go away there for a period of time, and glad it's back in basketball. And as far as coaches, I had the opportunity to coach against Don, and always appreciated his graciousness, when you went over to his place, and what a class individual. And Barry, I had the pleasure to play for him for 3 years there, and you're a young, stupid kid, and you end up not playing because I think you know more than the coach, and you find out that you don't.
Plus you wouldn't get a haircut.
I wouldn't. I wouldn't get a haircut, but Barry was always a thinking coach, always a great coach, and one that you really enjoyed playing for. Really liked him, and as far as I'm concerned, I kick myself in the rear for not winding up and spending the time with him, not necessarily the game, but around a gentleman with his integrity and the abilities he has. That same way I feel about Don coaching against him. So it's a pleasure having you guys here and hearing you talk about that particular game and your seasons and so forth. The only other thing, do you guys remember Jerry Outlaw was a senior, and I think Mark Stevenson was a senior, and of course I knew Jerry from Payne. I got to know Mark a little bit. But there was one game in Pana. It was a big shootout between those two guys. Do you remember that?
Yeah, we were 13-0 in Don's first year.
And I'll tell you, that was quite a game. And if the three-point line would have been in effect at that time, Jerry probably would have had the scoring record of Pana High School, because when he came across the half-court line, the ball may go up. Is that right? I mean, he would put it up from anywhere.
Here's what I remember about that game, Terry, is Jerry came down in the very first play of the game, and he hit one that it would have been a three-pointer in today's game. And I looked down there, and Don told him to stay off of it. The next time down, Jerry hit another. But anyway, he was hotter than heck that night.
He was
could've
quite a
missed,
player.
so.
And then Randy Bruns, Randy and I were good friends, and you talked about Randy in that game. Always worried about him. Wanted to shoot the ball, but Randy actually, knowing him from playing football and basketball with him in earlier years, was a team player.
Yeah.
Very much a team player, and whatever his coaching staff told him, Randy did. Randy was a good ball player.
No, that isn't always true.
Randy told me. Now, if you have a chance to say that. Please say it. So I'm gonna take that back, I'm gonna let Randy tell his own story.
I worried about Randy
Did you?
shooting in the Taylorville game, and thank goodness he didn't, we were able to stay in that game, but we had another game that same year, we were playing over Shelbyville tournament, and, we were playing Clinton, and we kinda held the ball on them too, not quite as much as we did on you guys, but, we were playing, and, we were behind 22-21, there was 4 seconds left to go in the game. And so I knew they were gonna double team Randy, not let him get the ball. So I set up this play for Fred Smith, to throw it into Fred and get him a shot there with 4 seconds to go. Well, they hand the ball to the guy out of bounds, and pretty soon, I put Randy clear on the other side of the floor. Pretty soon, here comes Randy, runs right in front of Fred, catches the ball and shoots it and makes it, and we win 23-22. Made me look like a great coach.
Using that guy for a screen, weren't you?
That is good,
Yeah.
That's great.
very good.
Well, once
No,
again,
he was a team player too. I just bring that up.
Well, there's another story about Randy. On our team, Randy was the only one allowed to throw a behind-the-back pass. So many times, if there was a long rebound or an interception, and we'd get a chance at a fast break, it would most time be Randy, they'd throw the ball to Randy, and Chuck Sloats, the one who missed this layup, as fast as he was, he would fill the other lane. And if it was a 2-on-1, you could bank it was gonna be a behind-the-back pass, not a bounce pass, just behind the back to Chuck and a layup.
Yeah.
He did that, I don't know how many times. But he was the only one on our team allowed to do that.
I remember that.
Well, if anybody else did it, it was showboating or hot dog. If Randy did it, it was a basket.
I forgot one person when I was growing up who I idolized, John Sloats.
Yeah, he was.
John, I forget about John. John was a heck of a ball player.
okay,
Could I ask?
You sure
add
can.
One thing?
we'll stay as
Mike
long as you guys
reminded
want to do
me,
this.
We had 2 other teammates, and Tom James was a close friend of mine, and he's passed away. You talked about role players. Tom was a pure shooter also, and just was a real tough competitor. And then Gary Farr, the other starter on our team, who lives in Texas now, just a tremendous competitor. And they never backed off from a challenge. Most teams we played were bigger than we were. We had very little height to speak of, but it was a privilege to play with Mike, Andy, Gary, and Tom, and the others, from my point of view. And one other thing, if you don't mind, Mr. Heaton showed a lot of courage to stall the way he did against us in this 11-10 game, and I'm sure it was a very unpopular tactic in the minds of many people. We didn't like it, Mr. Heaton, personally, but I got to give you credit. It almost worked, and you obviously, we didn't know any of the behind-the-scenes details until today in some ways, where you worked and worked and worked and practiced your strategy, and I got to hand it to you. That's a brilliant stroke of coaching.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Do you guys, did you talked about Mike having film back then.
Yes.
Barry, did you
We had-
utilize film?
We had a film of that. It was on, like you were saying, on that.
That 16 millimeter or something?
Somehow it got lost in the shuffle, but I did have one at one point.
How did you get that? I mean, did you trade film with the other coaches then or other teams?
Football teams used to do that from time to time, but I never did basketball.
Usually your own did the home games,
Yeah.
you know, they're paying ahead of photography. We had one, Mr. Parrish, he, for years, how many years did, or tell how many years he filmed for sports?
Home games. He did all the
Yeah,
home,
just home games
every home game.
and stuff, so we were able to get home games from that, and I probably have one when you guys played down there. I've got to look, I found some VHS, but guess what? I don't have a VHS player.
Well, as far as VHS goes, if you want that converted to a DVD, let me know. I can
Okay.
do that for you. But anyhow, today, technology with, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of the Huddle Corporation or whatever. They're got everybody in the country uses them as to trade films back and forth with coaches, and it's a great tool that kids can go home and they can get on their computer and they can look at the game and how the coaches graded the game. It's a great tool anymore, but technology's pretty fabulous.
Change.
So, well, once again, thank you guys for coming in here today and
Thank you.
being a part of this. And I'll make sure that please get me your addresses and names and addresses, and I'll get you a copy of this so you guys can have. And then we'll also get it on our website. But thank you once again.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.